Lieutenant Commander Sarah Jenkins had been a Navy SEAL for 11 years, and in that time she thought she had seen it all. She had breached doors in Fallujah, pulled drowning sailors from the North Atlantic, and traded fire with insurgents in the dense jungles of the Philippines. But nothing in her extensive and violent career had prepared her for the scene unfolding in front of her on a dusty, wind-swept hilltop in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan. She had been inserted via helicopter 2 days prior to lead a small 4-man element. Their mission was to establish a covert observation post, OP, overlooking a known Taliban logistics route. Intelligence suggested a high-value target. A Taliban commander known as the Engineer was set to move a large cache of weapons through a specific valley. Their job was to confirm the target, paint him with a laser, and call in an airstrike. It was a standard by-the-book reconnaissance mission. The team had settled in, their ghillie suits blending seamlessly with the scrub brush and rock. They were silent, patient, masters of the invisible war. Jenkins, through her high-powered spotter scope, was scanning the valley floor 3,200 meters away, a distance so vast that the trucks on the road below looked like tiny, slow-moving insects. She could feel the thin, cold air burning in her lungs. At this altitude, everything was harder, from thinking to pulling a trigger. The relative quiet of the morning was shattered not by an explosion, but by a deafening, world-ending boom that seemed to split the very air next to her head. Before her SEAL-trained brain could even process the sound, a concussive wave of displaced air slapped against her face, stinging her eyes. She flinched, instinctively dropping below the lip of the rocky outcrop they were using for cover, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her mind raced through 1,000 possibilities. Mortar? A short round from a friendly aircraft? An unseen enemy sniper had their position zeroed? "Contact! Incoming!" she hissed into her comms, her voice a tight, controlled whisper. Her team, Stone and Miller, were already prone, weapons up, scanning for a threat vector. But Petty Officer First Class Marcus Thorne, her own sniper, was still sitting upright. He wasn't looking through his scope. He was calmly, methodically working the massive bolt action of his rifle, and a weapon so large it looked more like a piece of artillery than a personal firearm. A huge, smoking brass casing, the size of a small energy drink can, clattered onto the rocks beside him. He ejected it, loaded a fresh round from the magazine, and settled back behind the scope, his breathing slow and even. It was then that Jenkins focused on the rifle for the first time. It wasn't the standard issue Mark 13 Model 7 she was used to seeing. This was a behemoth. A custom-built rifle with an absurdly long barrel and a suppressor so large it looked like a section of industrial exhaust pipe bolted to the front. It was unmistakably a Macmillan TAC-50, a rifle designed for one purpose and one purpose only, anti-materiel and extreme long-range engagement. She scrambled over to him, her voice a furious, panicked whisper. "Thorne, what the hell was that? I didn't give the order to engage. Our mission is observation." We are 3,000 meters from the target area. We are not cleared to fire. Report, now!" Thorne didn't take his eye from the scope. His voice was calm, almost serene. "Target down, ma'am." "Target down," she sputtered, incredulous. "What target? The trucks are 3 1/4 clicks away. You just gave away our position for a pot shot at a supply truck? We are compromised, Thorne. You just blew a 2-week intelligence build-up." Her mind was already calculating extraction routes, the escape and evasion plans. The noise alone would have echoed through the valleys for miles. Every Taliban fighter for 20 miles would now know something was up here. Thorne finally looked away from the scope, his young face a mask of professional detachment. He pointed a finger down the valley. "Not the trucks, ma'am. The hill on the other side. 3247 meters. The spotter was up there." Jenkins stared at him, then snatched her own spotter scope, reorienting it to the far ridgeline he was pointing at. It took her a full 30 seconds of scanning, knowing exactly where to look before she saw it. a tiny patch of darker color against the gray-brown rock. Through the wavering heat mirage, the shape resolved itself into the form of a man, slumped unnaturally over a rock outcropping. And beside him, the unmistakable skeletal shape of a Dragunov SVD sniper rifle. Her blood ran cold. A counter-sniper. And they weren't the only ones watching the valley. An enemy spotter had been up there, likely for the same reason they were, and he would have had a perfect, if extreme, line of sight to their position. He had probably been watching them for hours, just waiting for them to make a mistake, to shift a little, to let the sun glint off a lens. He had them dead to rights. Thorne hadn't just fired a weapon. He had saved all their lives. She lowered her scope and turned to look at Thorne, and who was now meticulously logging data into a small waterproof notebook. He wrote down the time, the wind speed he had last measured, the approximate air density, and the range. 3,247 meters. The number seemed impossible. It was nearly 2 miles. The bullet, she calculated, would have been in the air for nearly 10 seconds. And the flight time alone was so long that Thorne would have had to calculate the curvature of the Earth and the spin of the planet, the Coriolis effect, just to get the round close. That's a record, Stone whispered from his position, his voice filled with awe. That's gotta be a record. Thorne just shrugged, his focus already back on the mission at hand. He was a threat, ma'am. What are your orders? Jenkins took a deep, shaky breath, forcing the adrenaline and shock back down into the pit of her stomach. She was a SEAL officer, trained to adapt and overcome. The mission parameters had just changed, drastically. They were compromised, yes, but not in the way she had initially feared. The enemy now knew someone was in the mountains, but they didn't know who or where. They had just lost a sniper to a ghost. The confusion could work in their favor. All right, listen up, she said, her voice regaining its command authority. Hey, Thorne, was your shot confirmed? Single kill? Single, confirmed. 1 hostile, spotter. No movement, he reported. Then we stay. The enemy will be rattled. They'll be looking for a counter-sniper team closer to the valley floor. They won't expect us to be this far out. But we are now a hot OP. No more heroics unless it's life or death. Understood? She looked directly at Thorne. Yes, ma'am, he replied, the picture of discipline. For the next 6 hours, they remained frozen in place, and the sun arced across the sky, and the temperature plummeted as evening approached. Just as they were preparing for the long night ahead, the main target appeared. A convoy of 3 technicals and a single older model pickup truck moved into the valley below. Through her scope, Jenkins could see the engineer, a bearded man in a black turban, standing in the bed of the pickup, surveying his domain. He was arrogant, feeling safe in his own backyard. This was the moment. This was why they were here. Jenkins whispered into her radio, calling in the prearranged airstrike. Any base, this is Nomad 6. Priority target in the open. Request immediate KAS. She read off the grid coordinates, her voice a calm monotone despite the pounding of her heart. The response was immediate. Nomad 6, any base, good copy. Flight of 2 Vipers is 2 mics out. Paint the target. Jenkins activated her laser designator, a pencil-thin beam of infrared light. Invisible to the naked eye, lancing out across the valley and dancing on the hood of the engineer's pickup. In the cockpit of 2 AH-64 Apache helicopters, the pilots saw a perfect clear diamond on their targeting screens. They were inbound, fast and low. Below, the convoy continued oblivious. The men were laughing, their weapons slung carelessly. Then, the world turned to fire. The first Hellfire missile streaked in, silent until the very last second, so obliterating the lead technical in a blossom of flame and shredded metal. The second missile took the trailing vehicle. The engineer's pickup swerved, trying to flee, but it was too late. A third missile, guided by Jenkins's unwavering laser, slammed into the truck's engine block. The explosion was immense, a secondary blast from the ammunition they were carrying, ripping the vehicle apart. The entire strike was over in less than 30 seconds. Then the valley floor was a smoking graveyard of twisted metal and burning wreckage. "Good hits! Good hits!" Jenkins called into the radio. "Target destroyed! All friendlies are good! Exfil now!" The extraction was a blur of controlled chaos. They moved fast, putting as much distance between themselves and the OP as possible before the enemy could mount a response. Hours later, safely back at the forward operating base, the reality of the day began to sink in. And Jenkins was sipping a lukewarm cup of coffee in the operations tent when a young intelligence officer approached her, a tablet in his hand. "Lieutenant Commander Jenkins, we've been analyzing the after-action data from your mission, especially the, initial contact, the counter-sniper." Jenkins nodded, too tired for formalities. "What about him?" The officer looked up, his eyes wide. "We got a drone feed from just before the strike. We were able to geolocate the enemy shooter's position. We've confirmed the distance using satellite imagery and topographical mapping software." He turned the tablet to show her a screen with a digital map and 2 points connected by a line. The number at the bottom of the screen made her coffee suddenly taste like ash. 3,247 meters. "We've cross-referenced it with every known military and civilian record we have access to, ma'am. This is the longest confirmed sniper kill in history. It beats the previous record by almost 600 meters. Jenkins stared at the number, then back at the officer, then at the tent flap beyond which Petty Officer Thorne was likely cleaning his impossible rifle. She thought of the toy-like trucks in her scope, the impossible distance, the 10-second flight time. She thought of the unseen enemy spotter who had nearly killed them all, a threat eliminated before it could even fully materialize. She thought of her own shock, her reprimand, but her complete and utter failure to grasp the situation in that first, deafening moment. "Sir," the officer asked, breaking her reverie, "is there anything you'd like to add to the report?" Jenkins slowly shook her head, a ghost of a smile touching her lips for the first time in days. It wasn't a smile of joy, but one of profound, humbled respect for the man she commanded and the insane, beautiful, and terrifying profession they were in. "No," she said quietly, handing the tablet back. The report is accurate. You call that a toy? That's a Barrett .50 caliber." She paused, looking the young officer in the eye. "I was just surprised, that's all."